Thank you so much. I have a great fan club. That's really good. Because I told people I was going to be nervous, so everybody is now trying to be really nice. Thanks a lot. So I don't do this very often, so please bear with me. So I'm Doris. I'm responsible, as was already said, for the agriculture and marine business. The marine is an interim job that I'm doing at the moment. And I brought actually some slides about SKF because as I was starting to prepare for this talk, I assumed that everybody knows SKF, but then I remember my favorite saying about assumption, and that is, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. So I am talking a little bit about SKF. So SKF is a very young company, founded in 1907. So we've just been around a couple of years. We actually have more than 44,000 employees globally. We're present in about 130 countries. We are catering to almost 30 different industries, so that makes it very easy to pick out a target group and cater to that. If you've seen the SKF logo, probably or most likely, if you're an amusement park fan, you could see it at Liseberg. That's us. So SKF makes bearings, in case I don't think I've mentioned that, so any kinds of bearings. So if you came with train, car, whatever, there was probably a bearing anywhere inside there to make you move. But as I was preparing, so these are the industries, shouldn't forget about that. As I was preparing for this speech, I thought, okay, so yes, this is a big company, I'm responsible for one part, but what do we all have in common? And actually, as I heard all the presentations over the last times, I kind of thought, okay, I'll be done in 2 minutes because everything's been touched upon, really, so bye. What's really great is that, or I wouldn't call it great, but it's nice to see that we're all kind of struggling. So nobody has a defined answer for what it is that we're doing, which I think is terrific because it shows that we're all on a path. And some of us are more ahead than others. And so we're all going sort of down this path together. And going down the path, as we heard from the representative from Garmin, it's good to know where you are, but I'm going to take it a step further. So let's take a look at where we're actually coming from. So in the 50s, we've been through all these phases, and I'm not going to go into detail in the phases of the communication, but with the whole communication department, people that are around longer, they have gone through so much change, and I think it's important to just throw it up there and see what the difficulties are and how our jobs have changed over time. I mean, for the young folks, this is, probably, you don't know all of this, but some of us who are a bit older, there's an IBM computer there. So over time, the technology had a huge impact on how communication could be done. So we started out with, very one-way communication. Back in the days, you had one TV channel, you had maybe one newspaper, and then as technology developed, so you got the radio in there, then you got email, you got, if you believe it or not, that's actually one of the first mobile phones, the one with the big thingy there. And then, of course, the game changer, the internet came along, and now all these channels and all these technologies have developed over time, and it's making our jobs really, really complicated. Because they are complex. I mean, you try to reach your audiences. And in a way that some of the big corporations, like we as well, are set up, and you can see that very clearly from the historic view. We have different departments. So we have an IT department we have a web department for the website. We have somebody responsible for social media. We have people responsible for the different industries. And as the communication technologies develop to show that we can granularly, almost individually talk to one another, and then you talk about the customer journey, then how do you bring all of these together to create one certain customer story? And then you add the complexity of the different countries. So in a huge organization, you got to try to find a way of working together so that you can enable everybody to give their input into how you deliver your messaging in a good way. And it gets very complicated quite quickly, actually. Okay, let me just see where I am. Okay. So, as I said, the number of channels and the ways we can communicate it have exploded, and people are bombarded with information, and that's a lot what we heard over these last days. So depending on where you look at, what kind of research you're looking at, a person receives between 4,000 and 10,000 messages a day. As we heard earlier, we're just one generation into the digital age. So our brains just simply, they cannot compute this information. So people are looking for guidance in all these channels and everything that you do. So this is a chance for individual brands to be a guiding light, to be authentic, to have communication that is true through every channel, so that people can feel they can trust. And we heard a lot about authenticity and transparency and trust. And this is something that a brand can do through all these channels. So you gotta try to work together. And I'm going to share a little bit about one of my learnings, actually, from global to local, which is quite interesting. So you got to work together. So because you need to create value-added marketing for your customers. You need to have high-quality advertising, and you need an interactive experience. And this is coming back to my point to how do you bring all of your departments together to create that one customer journey. So in trying to achieve that, I wanted to look at how is social media used in the agricultural industry. And so I put in for a market study for a country in South America and for a European country. And so, of course, we had discussion with the agency that was doing the study. Then we had discussion with the countries. We had phone calls. We discussed all about it. So what is it? This is what we're trying to get. We had all of these discussions. And then we put the reports out. We discussed the outputs of the reports. And then what? Anybody work in global communications? So I had assumed, and you know how I feel about assumption, I already stated it. So I had assumed that, of course, they know their market quite well. So we were talking about persona development to really target, to really focus on our target group, what personas to look at, what channels to use, very operational insights, and what tactics they could use to bring them forward. And the truth is that agriculture, which of course is my main market, wasn't really a market for these countries that I was talking in. They had just started to be active in the agricultural market. So we were like 5 steps ahead of what they were trying to do. And this is, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not saying but the great thing about this was that we could go back, we could go back, and we could make it better at the next time that we did it. Because you need this connection. As I said, it gets very complex. You have all these channels, you have all these different markets, you have all these local channels as well, and then you come from global and you're trying to support your local countries. You're not trying to tell them what to do, because you can't, because business is done locally. but you need to understand where they're at in case so that you can support them correctly, and that's a really important point. So the next time we did it, and this is why that nice little teamwork slide is up there. The next time we did a market study, we had actually a workshop. So we spent a lot of more time and effort in preparing everything. We had a workshop, we had local teams, we had global teams, we had the marketeers, we had the salespeople. And I'm not saying it was a huge room, it wasn't 20 people, but it was the relevant people that needed to tell us, to figure out what is it that we know, what is it that we want to know, what do we think we know, what do we assume we know, and again, assumption, you know. We were really honest with each other, we were learning a lot from each other in these discussions, and it really brought a whole different level of working together and of understanding what the local market needed, where they were, so that we from a global perspective could support that in that way. So what is it that we actually got out of it? And you don't need to read this is just examples. So we were really looking at, in detail, oh, there's something missing. So this is something we have actually within SKF, a great group that's responsible for customer experience, for insights, and for measurements. And actually one of my colleagues is here right now. And this group is really, really crucial in helping and supporting us to come up with the good strategies, to come up with measurement systems that we need. Because what if you're doing all this communication and you don't take a look at it and measure it, then what good is it? It's just a voice crying into the open. So we really go along these circles, we plan our things, and then we can come back after we've done our campaign, our trade show, and we can measure these things. And on the left side, where actually you see parts of the reports that came out of that market study. And the people that we did that for with the workshop, they were really using that information to look at where their business opportunities are, how they could move forward, and how they could gain business in that special sector. Okay, so my takeaways for you. There is no one solution fits all. I think that's very clear. We heard that several times over the last day and a half, that you can't do one fits all anymore. You have to be really looking at what is your target group, how you define it, and how you can gain information from that. You need a really good cooperation between global and local teams. Like I said, you need to understand where they're at. Because oftentimes when you talk about amongst your peers and you develop these ideas, which you need to do, but you still need to see they have other priorities that they're working with. So it's important to see what can you do to really support them instead of just pushing something down into the local units. And I see somebody nodding there, great, thanks. So instead of really just pushing something down into the unit that they then need to translate and see what to do with it. So it's really important that you cater to that need. Don't trust on your old, so never assume, like I said, assumption, the mother of all fuck-ups. Never assume that somebody knows or even defines the same things you do. So as you start to talk about, define what that means. When you talk about certain terms, you have tactics, you have social media strategies, so that you really understand each other. That's really crucial if you want to be successful. Be open and honest, look at the blind spots. So where is it that information is really missing? It's not a crime. It's great if you find blind spots so that you know this is something that we need to look at closer. Do not trust your old truths. The world has changed and it's constantly changing. So you always need to have, your eye and ear outside what's going on. Support everything with data and methods, and make sure that someone has a holistic view. So if you're working in teams that are so focused on their own little task, you need to take a step back and you need to see where does that fit into what else it is that we're trying to do. How does that work within our brand strategy? How does that work with the communication goals that we are having? And then include everyone that is delivering to the customer journey. So as I said earlier, you have all these different departments. So try to think of what they might need to know. It might be an easy question to add to what you're putting forward in the report. So talk to them and try to find out what they're doing. Okay. This is all quite, we heard over the last day and a half very often that this can be quite overwhelming. We have a lot, so my final goal or my final saying is, treat it like you would eat an elephant, one slice at a time. Pick something that you could start off with and then go. And that's it. For you.